Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening. Coming up on today's show, we will preview the 2020 football season. Phil Steele, he does his annual 2020 college football preview publication, and he will be here to help us look at all the teams in the American. Phil is standing by in the virtual green room and will join us in just a few moments. The American Athletic Conference announced this week that it will postpone all competition and conference championships in the sports of men's and women's soccer and women's volleyball until the spring of 2021. That to align with the NCAA championship season. A decision regarding cross-country competition will be forthcoming, pending further NCAA clarification. That decision was approved by the conference's athletic directors and senior women administrators following the NCAA Division I Board of Directors confirmation that the NCAA Division I Fall Championships would move to the spring. So the initial plan of getting these sports underway in the fall, that has now gone by the wayside and will be spring events. And the AP college football poll is out. Teams from the American making the top 25, Cincinnati at number 20 and UCF at number 21. Of course, if you scale back all the teams that are not playing, they would come in at number 13 and 14, respectively. Of course, the early, very first poll of the season really doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. It's the usual suspects, and who can really tell you who the number one college football team is in the country when they haven't played a game yet? After a quick timeout, we're back with Phil Steele to preview all the teams in the American for the upcoming football season when the AAC Report continues in just a moment.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chadbar Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chadbar Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
And we are happy to welcome back to the show again this year to talk about his 2020 college football preview publication. Phil Steele is back on the AAC Report. Phil, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, a real pleasure, Jeff. Should be a good year for the Knights.
Yes, it should be. And before we go team by team through the AAC, the pandemic obviously has affected many things, and putting together this year's preview certainly, I'm sure, was no different. What challenges did you face, and how did you overcome them to get the publication out this year?
Yeah, and the two biggest changes with the magazine, Jeff, the first one is that normally we send the last page of the press right at the end of May every year. But this year in March, the state of Ohio got shut down for about 2 months. So I'm toiling away in an empty office because couldn't have the staff in here. When the staff was able to return, they came back full force. I got to talk to 110 of the 130 head coaches out there, and we put the magazine out, same great information, but it went a little bit later. It went to the press July the 8th this year. And the second difference this year is we normally print a couple 100,000, and they're everywhere, grocery stores, Walmart, places like that. But this year we only printed 50,000 magazines, and they're only in two locations. Barnes & Noble and Books A Million are the only two retailers selling the magazine this year exclusively. That's Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. So those were the two biggest changes, but the good news is we got all the information in there. Unfortunately, a bunch of schedules changed, Jeff. So what we did is on philsteele.com, we're posting the latest schedules so you could just paste them over in your magazine.
Awesome. Well, you have to pivot and adapt as things change in the world, and you have done a great job with that. And let's go team by team through the American Conference. And We mentioned the Knights, and you're expecting a great year. They're coming off, basically a down year. I'm using that in quotation marks in sarcasm after 2 New Year's Six Bowl appearances. 10-3 last year, through 3 losses by a total of 7 points. Coach Josh Heupel returns a stacked football team that you feel is definitely worthy of another New Year's Six appearance. And according to this headline at philsteele.com, UCF has a great shot at making the 4-team playoff this year.
That's right. And, with Ohio State dropping out of the mix because the Big Ten's not going to play football, I had an open spot. And in my analysis, it came up UCF. Now, I'm not a guy that's been Mr. UCF the last couple of years. In fact, last year, I picked Cincinnati to play Memphis in the title game for the American Conference, and those are the 2 teams that played. But as you mentioned, UCF wasn't far off. 3 losses by a grand total of 7 points. And last year's squad only had 11 returning starters. This year they have 16. You look at the different units that UCF has. They have my number 9 rated offensive line in the entire country, number 7 set of running backs, number 7 defensive backs. In fact, the entire secondary is on the Senior Bowl watch list. All 8 units rank in my top units in the front of the magazine. And, last year I had the American Conference rated as the 5th best conference in college football, ahead of the ACC. So that shows how good the football is there. And I felt that if UCF goes through the season unbeaten, which I think they can this year, and all the 3 Power 5 conferences, number 2 team will probably have 2 losses or more, why not put UCF in the playoffs? So I think they've got a great shot at making the playoff this year.
Well, I tell you what, that would be certainly a thrill for Knight Nation. No question about that. Running through the rest of the Americans, so Memphis is the defending conference champion. New coach in Ryan Silverfield as Mike Norvell goes off to Florida State, but they have Brady White, who seems like he's been in college football forever, at the helm of their passing game, and they, of course, are a high-octane offense. What are your thoughts on the Tigers possibly repeating as American champs?
I think they've got a great chance to get into the American title game this year. When you look at Memphis, they've got my number 8 offense in the country led by Brady White. And unlike most first-year head coaches, Ryan Silverfield is a guy that's been there. So, he has been here the last 4 years as the offensive line coach. He was the interim head coach in a bowl. It's not like he has to learn the player's strengths and weaknesses. He already knows everybody on the team, and they've got some explosive weapons. Kenneth Gainwell is back at the running back / receiver spot. He rushed for nearly 1,500 yards last year, had over 500 yards receiving. They've got Coxie back at receiver, 2 solid offensive linemen in Dylan Parham and Easy. And then defensively, I think they look pretty good as well. So Memphis is going to be a clear-cut contender, I think, in the American Conference, and they get that big game against UCF at home.
Yeah, that should be quite a tilt, and maybe possibly an ESPN Game Day opportunity for that. Meanwhile, Cincinnati, they were the Memphis opponent in the championship game, coming off back-to-back 11-win seasons under Coach Luke Fickell, who I believe is in line now for a contract extension. Desmond Ridder back at the quarterback position, and a team that has traditionally been a very good defensive football team. Give me your thoughts on the Bearcats.
Yeah, they're going to be even better on defense this year. 9 returning starters on the defensive side of the ball. And, they've got a player like James Wiggins. Last year when I was talking to Coach Fickell going over the team with them, he said James Wiggins is the best player on our team. And then he got injured, missed the season. Cincinnati still had a pretty good defense without him, but now they've got 9 returning starters, including James Wiggins back. That's going to be a good defense. They've got a veteran quarterback in Desmond Ridder, a veteran offensive line, a couple of NFL guys. James Hudson was a Michigan transfer that wasn't able to play during the season, but was able to start in the bowl game, and I think that's going to give them one of the best offensive lines in the country. Lorenz Metz, who was a starter last year, probably turns into a backup as Hudson's going to take his spot. That tells you how deep they are. So this is a very good Cincinnati team, and once again, one that's capable of contending for that American conference. I really like the American Conference. I think it's one of the most underrated conferences in college football.
Yeah, and lots of high-octane offense in the conference. SMU is a team that would qualify with that. A 10-win season under Coach Sonny Dykes a year ago, and another explosive offense. Shane Buechele leads the charge there. And what are your thoughts on the Mustangs as potential contenders?
Yeah, Bouchel's a big difference, and Sonny Dykes been bringing in a lot of transfers, so that's really helped them out, and he's hit some home runs there. And last year at midseason, their best wide receiver was Reggie Roberson, and then Roberson went down, and that's when James Prochet took over and had that big season. Now Prochet's gone, but Reggie Roberson's back, and keep your eyes on JUCO Danny Gray. He's one of the top JUCO wide receivers coming out. He's an NFL caliber guy, and I expect he and Roberson to be a pretty potent combo, along with tight end Kylan Granson. The offensive line, once again, a veteran unit, and defensively, they should be improved. Last year, they gave up 33.4 points per game. I see improvement on that side of the ball. It's an SMU team that at one point last year got as high as number 15 in the country and was 8-0 when they traveled to face Memphis on the road. Once again, a team capable of getting there to the American title game. So, loaded conference this year.
Staying in the Lone Star State, we look at Houston under Coach Dana Holgorsen after his first year of 4 wins. De'Aaron King redshirted and eventually transferred to Miami, and it was a tough transition season for the Cougs last year. Do you see improvement this season?
Big improvement. In fact, I've got Houston on my most improved list this year, and despite a tough schedule. Clayton Tune is going to be a vastly improved quarterback. He's more athletic than you would think. And he's a guy that was thrown into the fire last year and struggled at times, but he's got a much better grasp on the offense this season. They've got pretty good running backs with Carr, Porter, and Walker. The receiving core is solid, and defensively they got plenty of talent as well. This is a team where Dana Holgorsen opted to redshirt some players after 4 games, pointing towards this year. Now they've got 19 returning starters. They only lose 9 lettermen off of last year's squad overall. So it's a veteran Houston team that figures to be vastly improved this year.
And moving up to the great state of Pennsylvania, the Temple Owls under Coach Rod Carey in his first season, an 8-5 record last year. Anthony Russo, their veteran quarterback, will lead that team once again this year. And the Owls are one of those teams that certainly are on the brink of doing bigger things.
Yeah, and he was sort of a late signee last year. Rod Carey came in late with the team, and I thought he did a really good job. Temple got off to that they beat Memphis last year and played some pretty good football. Now this year they've got Anthony Russo back at QB. They've got 2 dangerous receivers in Gene Blue and Brandon Mack. The offensive line's got an NFL caliber guy in Vincent Picozzi. And defensively, I guess my biggest question is who's going to replace Quincy Roche, who transferred to Miami of Florida. Only 4 starters back on that defense, but Temple usually has a pretty good D. And Coach Carey, pretty confident that the defense will play well. So once again, this is a team that's one of those that can play with anybody in the American Conference.
And turning to Tulsa, Philip Montgomery, they had some tough seasons the last few years. After a 10-3 record in 2016, they follow up with 2-10, 3-9, 4-8. Last season, though, they were very competitive. They upset UCF. They took Cincinnati and Memphis to the wire. As they certainly showed improvement under that. And Philip Montgomery certainly had been kind of on a hot seat. What do you see for the Golden Hurricane?
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. I mean, they beat UCF. And they missed a 29-yard field goal at the end of the game, which would have beat Memphis. That tells you what type of team they were. They were probably the best 4-8 team in the country last season. Now, when Philip Montgomery took over, you go back to 2016, he had a veteran quarterback and explosive offense, and they went 10-3. He's got a veteran quarterback in Zach Smith, who's, of course, a Baylor transfer that was my number 24 rated QB. And they're going to have an explosive offense. Shamiri Brooks, Corey Taylor, a running back, Keelan Stokes, a receiver, veteran offensive line. The last year's team was driven by the defense. The defense played better than the numbers would indicate. This year they only have 4 starters back, so how quickly they can mature on the defensive side of the ball is going to be the key. But they were probably the best 4-8 team in the country last year and figured to be better this year and have an offense to rival Montgomery's 2016 Tulsa offense.
And another 4-8 team from a year ago, East Carolina. The Pirates, under Coach Mike Houston in his first season, certainly had to instill a culture change, but he's got a gunslinger at quarterback in Holton Ahlers.
Yeah, what a difference for those final 4 games of the year last year. In the first 8 games, East Carolina averaged 21.5 points per game. But over the last 4 games, with Ehlers unhooked and throwing the football 59% of the time, they averaged 37.2 points per game, despite facing 2 ranked teams. Ehlers is back. They've got Chase Hayden, an Arkansas transfer, a running back who Coach Houston is very high on. 3 dangerous receivers in C.J. Johnson, Tyler Snead, and Blake Prohl, who were the top 3 receivers last year. They're all back. Defensively, they're still trying to rebuild. When Coach Houston took over, he felt it was a rebuilding project. They needed to get a lot bigger on defense. They only have 4 starters back on the defensive side of the ball. But they're a team that I think is going to be improved. I think they still finished near the bottom of the American Conference, but that just shows you the depth of the conference overall. Definitely an improved team this year.
Tulane under Coach Willie Fritz, back-to-back 7-win seasons as the team continues its emergence, and I think you could make a case that their 2019 7-6 season was an improvement over the 2018 version. Will Hall, as the offensive coordinator, certainly has that offense running in the right direction.
Yeah, and their motto this year is good to great, and that's what their hope is. And we saw it last year. I mean, they got off to a great start last season, and then sort of tailed off down the stretch, but had a couple of close losses as well. Despite the losses at running back, Coach Fritz still feels very strong about the running back core. The offensive line rates in my top units, and defensively, this is where they make their hay. Remember 2 years ago, Tulane had 41 sacks on the defense. Now, last year with the veteran unit, they somehow dropped to 21 sacks. But that same group is almost all back. Patrick Johnson, DeAndre Williams, Cameron Sample, all seniors. Jeffrey Johnson, a junior. I think they get back to that 41 sack level, and that's going to make them a dangerous defense. They have my number 50 rated secondary, and they're also solid on special teams. Coach Fritz is high on this team. He thinks that they're ready to take that next step and go from being good to great. And if they do take that next step, that would all of a sudden make them a contender in the American Conference.
The Naval Academy had a bounce-back season in 2019 after 3 wins in 2018. They get 11 wins last season. And, of course, they had one of the great college football seasons ever, turned in by their great quarterback, Malcolm Perry. He has now moved on to the National Football League, and that's a big void to fill for Coach Ken Niumatalolo.
It sure is, and it's my biggest question mark, probably in the entire American Conference, is who's going to take Malcolm Perry's place at quarterback, because he was dynamic last year, rushing for 2,000 yards, and, of course, throwing for 1,000 yards. Just a threat to score anytime he touched the ball. Now, they've got a veteran team. For Navy, that's pretty good. They have 13 returning starters. That's more returning starters than they've had in 5 years. So that tells you the veteran part of it. Now, Dalen Morris is going to be the key. He's taken over at the quarterback spot. How he does and fill in the shoes of Malcolm Perry is going to be the big question. Remember, this team was just 3-10 2 years ago and bounced to 11-2 last year. I think they'll be somewhat in between this year. I do expect a step back without Malcolm Perry, but Niumatalolo always has his team well prepared. And what better team than a service academy to get through all these unusual off-season that we've had?
Yeah, no question about that. And then our neighbors to the west, South Florida, under new head coach Jeff Scott, he takes over a team that definitely certainly has underachieved under Charlie Strong, going from 10 wins to 7-4, and a program that really is in tough shape right now.
Yeah, and, Jeff Scott is unfortunately the only first-year head coach in the conference. And, talking to the 110 head coaches that I did this year, most of the experienced coaches, talking to them, I'd say, hey, coach, tough break, no spring. And they'd say, you know what, Phil, we had the off-season conditioning. We got ready for the spring. The only difference is going to be maybe that redshirt freshman doesn't pass up a junior for a starting spot, but we'll be fine. Put the ball on the field. You talk to the first-year head coaches, it's a different story. It's, hey, Phil, we didn't really even get to see the guys on the field this year. I have some questions, and that's Jeff Scott's predicament here. He's taken over a team that, let's face it, they, as you mentioned, under Charlie Strong, they struggled, dropping all the way down to 4-8, and it wasn't pretty at times last year. You look at some of the blowout losses at the end of the year. There is some talent there, but I think it's going to take Coach Scott probably about 2 years to get this thing rolling, and not having those spring practices, I think, is going to be huge. So I'm going to say South Florida is going to finish near the bottom of the American due to the fact they have a first-year head coach.
One of the things about the American that is definitely stands out and why the conference is such a terrific conference is the talent that now resides in the conference. Who do you see as players of the year on both offense and defense in the league?
Well, offensively, you could go a lot of different directions. You could go with Shane Buechele of SMU, Kenneth Gainwell of Memphis, a couple of guys right there. Reggie Roberson at SMU, I think, will have a big year. And then you look at that UCF talent that they have at the running backs and the skill players. A player like Otis Anderson can easily step up there. So I think there's going to be a lot of competition offensively this year. Defensively, I might have gone with Quincy Roche of Temple, who was the Defensive Player of the Year last year, but he's now gone. I would have to say Diego Fagot of Navy is a linebacker that is one of the best in the country and somebody worth watching. And then that guy I mentioned earlier from Cincinnati, keep your eyes on James Wiggins. I think he's someone that could really make an impact this year. And if you're looking for UCF, let's see one of those guys in the secondary just take over, because all four guys in the secondary are NFL caliber. So a player like Richie Grant, I think, would have a good opportunity as well.
Most definitely, and as you mentioned, you're very high on UCF as potentially making the college football playoff. Of course, I have my my doubts about the playoff committee, because I also see them doing 3 SEC teams in Oklahoma.
Well, I think it's going to be a different year this year than what we've had in the past, and I believe the fact that a magazine like mine listed the American Conference as the 5th best conference in college football last year, I think gives credibility to it. And they've got the pedigree, having a couple of unbeaten seasons that they did. So I think UCF does indeed have that possibility of making the playoff this year.
Yeah, and I actually meant to say 3 SEC teams and Clemson. How could I forget about them?
There you go.
Because they certainly have been a gold standard in college football over the last several years. Well, Phil, again, if you can just remind the folks about where to get the publication again this year, and also how to follow you on social media.
I appreciate that, Jeff. And once again, the magazine is only available at 2 locations this year, Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. We've had a lot of people which follow me on Twitter, which is at PhilSteele042, and they say, hey, I've been driving all around looking for it, can't find it. It's only at Barnes & Noble, only at Books A Million, so don't waste your gas. Now, you can, of course, go online to PhilSteele.com. That's STEELE.com. When you go there, you can order the magazine and get some great football information as well. And once again, you can follow me on Twitter. It is at PhilSteele042. But 352 pages. I like to feel it's like getting 130 different media guides all rolled into one. About 4 times the amount of information in any other college football preview.
It is absolutely great stuff, and as always, we do appreciate you coming on the show and giving us a look at the conference, and best wishes to you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. A lot of fun talking football with you once again. Always great to talk American Conference football.
Great to have Phil Steele back on the program again this year, and he gets a lot of this stuff right. And I know Night Nation would be hysterical and just crazy if the Knights were to follow through on what he thinks an opportunity to get into the college football playoff. Fingers crossed. You never know in this crazy 2020 football season what could happen. We're back to wrap up this program right after this.
Night Nation, this is Adam, one half of the dynamic duo that is the Sons of UCF, which is found only on the Nightline Sports Network. Join UCF Mike and I each week as we bring you some of the latest from in and around UCF sports, including such great segments as the Josh Heupel Translator, Top 8 Lists, and Cow of the Week. We'll also bring you some of the most in-depth and unique interviews with some of your favorite former Knights. You don't want to miss a moment, so make sure you subscribe to the Nightline Sports Network wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll take care of the rest. Go Knights. Charge on.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fagley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Nightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Nightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
And that's about to wrap it up for this edition of the AAC Report on the Nightline Sports Network. Thanks again to Phil Steele for joining us, and check out his 2020 college football preview publication. It is great stuff. As always, please follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88, and please like and share all of our Nightline Sports Network programming to your friends, family, and even to your enemies. This has been the AAC Report only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.